Dermot Dunne, thank you very much for joining me here in the Kevin Barry Room ahead of your concert with the Irish Chamber Orchestra, your live stream here from the stage of the National Concert Hall. Tell us, how has the pandemic been treating you, or how have you treated the pandemic maybe over the past 15 months?
Actually, I've been fine, I have to admit.
That's nice to hear.
I know, probably a lot of people will hate me saying that, but, well, of course, there haven't been many performances, so that's all been a little bit quiet. But that kind of happens to me sometimes. I go through phases where I have a lot of concerts, it's very busy, like the moment, actually. Yeah. And then phases where there's nothing much for a few months, you know. So I just kind of took it as an extended fallow period. And lots of free time, because there isn't all that time spent traveling and commuting. Teaching at TU Dublin has been online for the year. So, you know, that was all very convenient. Could go for a walk by the sea every day, and lots of reading and cooking, and yeah.
Sounds good.
It sounds like I've been on holidays. I didn't mean.
You're not the first person to say it, actually. People have kind of taken, I know people, really busy musicians have said, I just took the time and just stopped. So you're not the first person to say it. Go back to, let's start with your childhood. Why did you choose the accordion? How did you end up playing the accordion?
There was a girl in a class, I think maybe ahead of me, Niamh Coleman, also a neighbour. Yeah. I didn't know she was a neighbour at the time, and she was brought from class to class one day with her accordion to play Scott Joplin's Entertainer.
Fantastic.
And I just thought, wow, that's just amazing. And we happened to have one at home. There was one in the closet, just hidden away. My older sister and brother had played it, and I took it out and I kind of put it on the bed, and I didn't know how to strap it to myself and do all of that. So I'd kind of pull it like that and kind of play it as if it was a piano, and eventually just things kind of evolved.
At what age were you when that happened?
I think I was 9, third class. That's about 9, isn't it?
And there was music in your household then? If there was an accordion in the house, who else played music?
Well, I am one of 7 children. Okay. So yeah, there was music in the house, but it was more records than playing. My older sister and brother Lorraine and James had played, but they'd stopped before I ever started. In fact, apparently, I was just like a baby in the cradle, and my sister would come over and scare me with the noise of the instrument. So it's kind of come back to, you know, haunt her now. And my older brothers played, a little bit of guitar, and one played drums quite a lot. We heard music, you know, ABBA and all the greats, and the Beatles, of course, or Bob Dylan, all of that music. Okay. And then my brother James had very eclectic tastes. And in between the Bob Dylan, there'd be a bit of Beethoven, and so that kind of caught my ear at some point.
Okay. So, and then who did you study with then? And tell us about your studies, and where did you get lessons?
Well, I was very lucky. By coincidence, one of the finest accordion teachers in Ireland, Paddy Kavanagh, lived very close to me, walking distance. I used to walk. I had the accordion on one of those little kind of sets of wheels, you know, you use for your shopping. And I'd go off once a week for my lesson there. So I was with Paddy Kavanagh for a good few years, and then at some point later on, his daughter Patricia Kavanagh, who's a pianist but had studied accordion before she ever played piano, I think. I started to study with her. That's in Ireland before I went abroad.
Okay, and then, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but to go on a bit further, when you kind of left school, did you study actuary?
Yeah, that's right. I was finishing school, and I decided, oh, look at that, that's a challenge, 560 points or whatever it was. I'll put that on my list. So actuarial and financial studies in UCD I studied that. So, like, because I'm going to move on now to 1996, and when you won the RTÉ Musician of the Future. Yeah, in here?
In here, yeah. Like, that was an amazing thing that you did, when you think about it, because, like, I mean, we're probably similar ages, so I was around at the time, you know, like, and, you know, for an accordion player to come through the keyboard class and come out the far end against all the pianists, and then to go to the final and play with the RTÉ National Symphony Orchestra, and then win the thing, like, it was, like, I'm not going to say you were disadvantaged, but it was kind of, at the time, I remember people going, wow. Like, first of all, it was amazing for the competition that the jury took the courage to do that, you know. But at the same time, for you to do it, like, you kind of, you know, people would know there'd be a kind of the firmament of the players around. You kind of say, well, this would be the bunch of players who'd be in for that competition, and you kind of came from nowhere, you know. I've got so many questions about this time that I've never asked you before. Tell us about that time and the lead up to it.
Well, first of all, let me just say that you use the word disadvantage. Actually, that has always been my advantage.
Okay.
You know, I can't tell you how. In fact, I would say every single concert I've ever played, somebody comes up to me and says, I never knew the accordion could sound like that. Or, I never liked the accordion. And I go, do you like it now? You know? So it's always the fact that people don't know what to expect.
Okay.
You know, if you play the piano or the violin, people know, you know, and have high expectations as well. So maybe people just have lower expectations when I play. But so Jane Carty, who ran the competition, opened up a section. I wasn't actually in the keyboard. The keyboard was still there. David Quigley was the pianist in the final that year. I was in, I think it was quite a funny category. It was organ, accordion, and percussion.
I remember it, yes.
Pater Townsend was in the semi-final.
I forgot that there was a section, that makes sense.
And I just entered it for the crack. I had never played in the competition with other instruments, only with accordions. And you had to put down a concerto for the final. And I never played a concerto. I never thought I would. And I happened to have the dots, you know, of a concerto. So I said, yeah, I'll put that. I'd never played it. I'd never even heard the piece, you know. So I put that down. So thankfully, there was a gap between the winning the section and the final, because they had to get sheet music ordered in, you know, and so on. So it was about a month. So after I won that, it was suddenly, oh my God, I better learn this concerto. Because I'd never learned it, you know, because I was so sure I would not be in the finals. That's brilliant. And so then when it came to being in the finals, there was no question in my mind. There was no way I was going to win. So I'm not saying I was relaxed. Of course you're nervous because it was live on television, you know, with the National Symphony Orchestra. I couldn't do it now. No, I'd be terrified playing live on television. But I went with just, this is a great experience, you know, attitude, and wow.
Because, like, now at that stage, were you studying actuary at that time?
I was studying for my finals.
Yes.
February of my last year, you know.
So that event must have played a big role in your decision making at that time.
Yes.
So prior to the Musician of the Future winning it, were you definitely going to go on to actuary or
something in that line?
Yeah.
Reluctantly, but yeah, was kind of heading that direction.
And I remember, I remember lots of things very clearly about the final and the lead up to it. I remember talking to a player in the National Symphony Orchestra who were in rehearsals and going, the accordion player, unbelievable. You know, I remember seeing you play going, music making, like, beyond anything else. So where does that, you used to spoke, and I wasn't going to mention this, but you mentioned nerves. You came across so relaxed on that final. And every time I've seen you play, you just seem to, it's almost like talking to you. It's like the accordion doesn't exist. It's like you're just talking direct to the audience. Where does that come from? That's a natural thing. You can't learn that, I don't think.
I think, I mean, you know when I say it, that when you do something you're familiar with, it's easier. So if I'm playing a concert in a venue that I know, with musicians who I know, and I know some of the audience, it's a bit like this, you know? Yeah. But then if you're in a situation which you're a little bit out of your comfort zone, you will be a bit more nervous. Or you don't know maybe the piece as well as you know other pieces. But I guess you have the experience that, well, I didn't totally mess up any time in the past. I'm not going to do it tonight. You know?
Wow, okay.
This is not going to be the first time I complete. And even if I do, I'll manage to pick up the pieces somehow and carry on, you know.
And then, like, I've got so many questions about this time. So, for people who've never sat in front of a symphony orchestra, when I don't mean in front of the symphony orchestra, the audience, but like on the stage, facing out to an audience with an instrument, and the whole forces of, 85 people behind you.
Incredible.
that was your first time to do that.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Tell us about how you felt in the first, like, 30 seconds of the rehearsal when the orchestra started up on your very first rehearsal for the final. What did that feel like?
It's incredible, and I still get that sensation because there really is nothing to explain to somebody who has never experienced it, to be in an orchestra or even within a section. Sometimes I've played maybe with concert orchestra within the orchestra,
Yes.
to be surrounded by this amazing sound. And so there was an introduction, as there often is in the concerto, and it's fortissimo, loud, and percussion and everything. So it was just, and of course this is a piece I'd never heard before, you have to remember.
Was it like, did you hear a recording before you went even to the rehearsal? The very first time you heard the piece was that
On
day
stage.
on stage with the NSO.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
So it's something incredible, and you feel the vibrations as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the stage, which is fantastic.
It's kind of mad. It's kind of bonkers. So you're dealing with, like, I'm just wondering about, like, I know, like, what it's like to be in front of an orchestra and processing lots of information very quickly, you know?
Yeah.
So you're processing lots of stuff. You're hearing the music for the first time while you're about to play your solo part.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find yourself having to adjust what you'd known about how you play, like, on the spot with the orchestra, or did you just manage to find a cocoon for yourself and just play?
Just like that, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the orchestra, I can remember, they were fabulous. Ashley Drury-Byrne,
Yeah.
I remember was there, Andrea as well, and harp, you know, coming up to me to ask me about a section. Should I do this? I haven't a clue, you know. I'd say, go, you know more than me what to do there. And Coma Pierce conducting. Everybody was so nice and so welcoming and made you feel great, you know, so, you know, really supportive, really, really supportive.
So, like, before the Musician of the Future, what repertoire were you playing? Like, where, like, give us a kind of a potted history of from day one at your first accordion lesson up until the point where you're playing this concerto that you have never heard before.
It took a while to learn Scott Joplin's Entertainer, but that was one of the landmark achievements. So yeah, people sometimes ask this question, what kind of repertoire, you know, did you learn? Because I think we often we put the box in a box, you put the accordion into a particular category, although it's an instrument that's used in everything from, you know, tango to contemporary classical to, I mean, primarily a folk instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, that's its origins. Yeah. But in many, many cultures, whether it's Ireland or Italy or Russia, wherever. So I played, you know, anything from a tango to a musette to an Italian tarantella to a Russian gypsy tune, little prelude by Bach here, there, little classical pieces thrown in, and quite a bit of contemporary music because, you know, the only original repertoire was, you know, from the last 50 years or so. So accordionists, even when they're quite young, at 14, 15, are playing a lot more contemporary music than maybe a pianist or violinist might be, because you have all that 18th and 19th century of massive repertoire to draw on. So there was that as well, you know, quite a lot of Russian contemporary music.
So then you, after you won the Musician of the Future, and you are presumed graduated, your finals went at UCD, and that, did you went to Kiev then to study? Why that decision, and why, I'm curious to know, why is there a sense that accordion repertoire a lot of it seems to come from Russia or that part of the world?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, it's not just there, but when I was, you know, my mid-teens, and I went to a couple of competitions in Europe, you know, the first, second, third prize was always going to someone from Russia or Ukraine, from you know, former Soviet countries, and I mean that was the same, I suppose, in piano and violin as well. The arts and music, particularly, were just such a big part of the society and culture. So then, when I had the opportunity to go and study, I had some funding. I thought, I want to go there. Like, why are there so many amazing musicians coming from there? And of course, there was a lot of repertoire because there were a lot of players studying and performing. So a lot of the composers, they were writing for the instrument. So I was really attracted to that. You know, there were about, I think, 50 or 60 accordion students on the degree at the time when I was there.
Say that again.
50 or 60. There was almost as many as there were pianists.
50 or 60 accordion students.
Yeah, now, of course, the 5 years.
On degree course, of course, 5 years, but that's amazing.
Huge numbers. There were 11 teachers or 12 teachers. of accordion. Yeah, only accordion. Yeah.
My God. So it's almost as popular as piano, or just as popular as piano?
Pretty
Wow.
much. Numbers would be comparable out there.
How long did you study there then in Kiev?
5 years.
And how did you find the culture and everything about living there? And
Oh, I mean, it was very different, very different. It's very hard to say.
Yeah.
When someone asks you that question, it was.
did you miss Ireland?
Well, I was back every few months. I came
Okay,
back
you
for
came
a
back.
month at Christmas and the summer for a couple
What
of
did
months.
your family think of you suddenly not going into actuary and doing music? Was there any kind of get yourself a real job?
Not at all.
No,
No,
okay.
never.
Okay.
No.
Let's talk a little bit about the instrument itself.
Yeah.
So the way most of our listeners and viewers here would be aware that if you're a violinist, you go somewhere and you go choose an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
They would have heard a Stradivarius. If you're a pianist, you might pick a Steinway or whatever your preferred choice of piano is. What's the situation with the accordion? How do you choose an instrument? Is it the same thing? Is there one make? And what things do you look for in an accordion when you're picking an instrument?
I suppose it's more like a family of instruments because there's buttons, there's piano keys, they come in different shapes and sizes. The reeds can be made differently.
Yeah.
You can have different tuning. To give an example, if you can imagine some recording of Edith Piaf, that the accordion sound and that has a very kind of tremolo, warbling kind of sound, which I don't have that switch on the instrument. You also have all these different switches, like on an organ, to bring in different
effects,
registers and so on.
Where did they come from? Is the accordion, is the sound of the accordion, is it influenced by organ building and organ playing?
I'm certain it must be.
Yeah.
It must be,
Okay.
the different octave registers and so on. So there's a whole range of instruments, and depending on the style of music you play, might dictate which instrument you get. So the one that I have would be the standard, conservatoire instrument, and has a very specific range. It's my lowest note is the lowest E on a piano, and the top note is a C sharp, just one note above the piano. So it's almost on each side. You have almost the same range as a piano. But of course, it's a very different instrument to the piano.
Yeah.
No sustain pedal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'd love a sustain pedal.
Would you? But you can do what all pianists' dream is, because once they play a note, the piano dies immediately. Whereas yours can do a long line of crescendo.
Yeah, that's it. I suppose when I'm sometimes talking to a composer who might be writing for the instrument, I would say to think of it more like an organ.
Okay.
In terms of how the sound is produced than a piano.
Okay. And so, you said earlier on that a lot of the repertoire has been written just in the last 50 years for the accordion.
Other than folk music, which wasn't necessarily for the accordion.
Or music that's appropriated from other sources,
exactly.
So, and then obviously you were probably heavily involved in commissioning most of the time. A lot of accordionists are.
Yeah.
What's the... you mentioned there that you kind of said you would say to composers a lot of the time, maybe think about the accordion more like an organ. What's composers' reactions to the accordion? What do they do when they get to write a piece for the accordion? And tell us about that conversation that you would have with a composer for a new piece.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have premiered, I think, 50 pieces written for me for the accordion. Now, most of them are chamber music.
Yes.
There's only a small selection of solo pieces with groups like Concord, Jane O'Leary commissioned many pieces which incorporated accordion. Okay. So that's 50 works by Irish composers.
Fantastic.
It often is one of the two extremes. They either write something that is incredibly difficult to play or something that's very, very simple, Okay. And simplicity is a great thing, it can be simple and very effective. Yeah. I think sometimes they're maybe a little bit apprehensive because there's so many possibilities and so many different things, and it's very unfamiliar. So I kind of demonstrate some of the kind of they like some of the effects. Quite
The
often they're
effects.
attracted by there is effects that you can get, bellow shakes and note bending and tremolos and the extreme registers. I mean, you can play, clusters like right up at the top of the piano and do them with changing dynamics. And
But the extreme, I'm always struck by the extreme range of dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
You can start tones from like absolutely nothing, almost like echo tone, the clarinet. It can come from nowhere. And yet you get these also huge bass sounds as well. It's an amazing instrument.
Yeah, this is...
Before we move on to your program with the Irish Chamber Orchestra, just one last question about the instrument. When you I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking of all the musicians who hold instruments that they embrace. So cellists, double bass players, maybe tuba players, and of course accordions, because you very much embrace the instrument. What does that do to you, when you play the instrument? Because the instrument's kind of part of you. It's almost like you're holding a long lost friend. You haven't seen them in such a long time. What does it do to you when you play the accordion?
Oh, it gives you pins in your shoulder and your neck and your back. And it was fine when I was a bit younger, but now I find that if I don't play for a while and then I suddenly play a lot, like I was rehearsing and recording a little bit with Mary Coughlin this week.
Wow.
And so there's another genre as well, great musician. And I feel quite out of shape, so I'm a little bit kind of tender. So,
but what does it feel like to play the accordion? Like, what does it do to you, apart from the pains?
That's a funny question I've never really thought about. I think for any musician, the instrument kind of becomes an extension of almost your personality in a way, the way you in an abstract way, obviously, in the way you shape a phrase or...
That's what it feels like. That's what it looks like when I watch you play. Like it's just that the accordion's almost not there. It's just you.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, it's there. It's 15 kilos of being there.
15 kilos of being there. Let's move on to your program with the Irish Chamber Orchestra. You have a long association with the Irish Chamber Orchestra.
Yeah.
And they're a very different orchestra, like in size and personality in general, to the RTÉ National Symphony Orchestra. Tell us what the relationship is like now. What's it like to play with the Irish Chamber Orchestra, having known them for so long?
Oh, yeah. They're just such an amazing bunch of musicians. I first played with them, I think it was 1999 or 2000, so it's over 20 years. And I'd say 3/4 of the orchestra, if not more, are still the same people who were there all that time ago. So I know them all, from then by name. I know their husbands and wives and kids, and so I'm, good friends with many of them, and I've played with many of them outside of the orchestra as well. So it really does have that. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but there is that real family sense, and they're incredible as well. They're so responsive, and they all get on really well with each other. Like there's no cliques or, oh, she doesn't like him or he doesn't like, there isn't that sense. There's a real...
How important is that the musicians you play with get on well?
Oh, of course. I couldn't imagine it being otherwise. I wouldn't like it to have to experience a situation where that's not the case. So it's been wonderful over the years. Every now and again, sometimes it's not for a few years, and then sometimes it might be within a few months. In fact, in this case, within a few weeks that I'm working with them.
Great. And your program, aside from a concerto by Malika, you play works by Piazzolla.
Yeah.
And most people know Piazzolla for his tango music.
Oh, yeah.
But he's a fascinating musician beyond the tango music, and his life is fascinating as well, and his interaction with music through his life. Is Piazzolla an influence on you in your playing, but also your mindset as an accordion player?
Well, first of all, he actually played an instrument that's different. It's called a bandonion. It's closer to a concertina. And it has a...
While we're here, I was going to ask that question in a minute.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the accordion and the bandonion?
Well, the sound and also how you play it. I wouldn't be able to play a bandonion. I had a look once. It's the notes are laid out in the most random pattern and very different technique. It's played like this, more like a concertina, whereas mine is like this.
Yes.
And it has a kind of a husky, raspy sound. So it's a little bit of a different sound. But of course, it's from the family. You know, I was talking about, I sound like mafia now, you know, Piazzolla's the family. Yeah, I've played a lot of his music over the years. And it's great music. I mean, look, it's brilliant melodies, driving rhythms. What more do you want, you know? And I often play with the chamber orchestra. They always say, oh, let's play some Piazzolla. Even if we're doing something else, you know, can we have a Piazzolla tune as well? So we're doing quite a few Piazzolla tunes this time. And the Molique Concerto. By the way, that was also, I'm a real magpie stealing repertoire, not only from piano or violin, but from my own family, you know, from other instruments. This is a concertina concerto.
Okay.
Apparently there was this amazing concertina player in the 19th century, Giulio Regondi, and he commissioned lots of composers to write works, including concerti for concertina. So it's a gorgeous piece. A bit like Mendelssohn, you know, that kind of...
Really?
Yeah. And we have
fascinated.
nothing in our repertoire, you know, that's... I can't even say it's original, but it's, you know, close enough, let's say. So most of the original repertoire is last 50, 60 years. So it's great to have something from the 19th century, you know, to get
You've
to play.
piqued my interest. I can't wait to hear it now. I'm looking forward to it.
It's just so charming, as everything that's got slow,
Mendelssohn, the notion of
that kind of,
that's amazing.
Mendelssohn violin concerto, kind of.
But just to return to Piazzolla for a second, like he seems to me to have struggled a little bit with, you know, being an Argentine composer, performer, steeped in the tradition of tango and milonga in Buenos Aires. And then also, you know, having this, I mean, one of his early teachers taught him Bach and piano, or he was a piano teacher. Nadia Boulanger eventually, and he studied with Ginastera as well. So do you find that, like, in a weird, because you seem to be somebody who, maybe a bit like me, moves around different styles and genres of music with great ease. Is there ever a time when you feel a little bit like Piazzolla, where you kind of felt you had to decide, do I go down a serious classical route, or do I stick to tango, which is what I'm steeped in? Do you ever feel that conflict yourself?
No,
you have to make a decision.
You know, everybody seems always so obsessed with putting stuff into categories and boxes. You know, that's that music. There's only 12 notes, you know. Like, just you can combine the different patterns. That's it, you know, at the end of the day. And yet we have all these genres that we try to define musicians and even instruments. We say, oh, that's an instrument for that. But no, he found his thing. He was not loved in Argentina and still isn't, because it wasn't the traditional tango. He took that as his origins, but he had all his classical training and his, you know, orchestration, polyphonic textures, all of this he brought into the music as well. I've forgotten. You probably asked me a few questions. Really, if I answered.
So you did answer the question. You did. I was kind of curious about, though, that there's no conflict. You don't see the conflict of repertoire where you've got to decide to do this. You can just move around.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So, as I said, I played this week with Mary Coughlin. Next week, I'm playing an arrangement I made of Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition for a quartet. And then we have Piazzolla and Molique. You know, I'm just waiting for the Rolling Stones to call me. I'll play anything, you know.
So good. Have you ever danced a tango?
Badly.
Okay.
And don't ask me to. I know I have the shoes for it today, but don't ask me to demonstrate.
Because there is this feeling among, you know, certain musicians that if you can't play a waltz unless you've danced a waltz, and you can't play a tango unless you've danced a tango. So,
well, Piazzolla said that his music was for the mind to dance, not the feet. Because it's actually, I think that's why a lot of Argentinians, let's say tango fans, don't like his music, because it's not really for dancing to. It just doesn't. Maybe it just doesn't have the regular 16-bar structures and the tempo and so on. So I don't know if you have to really be able to dance a tango to play one, but I can't dance one. I've tried, but, you know, had a few lessons, but
good.
Long time ago.
Dermot, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
Thanks
David.
very much for joining us, and the very best of luck
Thank
for your
you.
concert with the Irish Chamber Orchestra. We're all looking forward to it greatly.
Me too.